Good morning everyone, it's Kim from the Shamrock Quilt Studio and we're working on our Azure project today. Our block today is number 36, 4 corners, and it is going to be a challenge. Now, just for full disclosure, I do have a lot of the pieces put together, but they're not all together. But I want to talk to you today about how to assemble them, but also some of the challenges of doing things when they're teeny, itsy bitsy pieces. We'll be right back. Hi. Now, I'm working on our block 36 4 corners today, and this is a really challenging one, not because there are Y seams or funky angles that we have to deal with, but there's a lot of pieces and some of them are super tiny. Let me show you the little diagram of the block. And I'm going to bring that up really close. I don't know how good the light is the only thing. But that's 4 corners, and you can see from this that there's a center here that has a lot of little tiny corners. And that was our challenge with this block. Well, I think there were 2 challenges. Let me back that up. First of all, anytime I'm having to deal with pieces with angles, I'm still not comfortable enough that I usually get it the first time. I usually have to play around with it and sit it on there and see if it's going to come out the right way and then stitch it, and about half the time I end up picking it out and stitching it again. But I'm learning and I'm getting there, and I'm getting more confident with foundation paper piecing with every block I do. Now this one looked really easy when I looked at it, especially after some of the ones we've done, but the angles were throwing me a bit, and I finally got that, I think, kind of settled in my mind. And I want to show you how this is going to come together. It's going to have to be kind of an exploded view of this. I don't have this one. I've got it pinned already. This is going to be the 4 pieces on the outside of the block. And then in the middle are these 2 tiny little things. Now, I've chosen in this block to make the cross or the X pattern from the 4 corners be a dark and have this box in the middle be the white. And that was kind of a turnabout from some of the other blocks that we've done where the outside or the background was the light fabric. So I wanted to make this one a little bit differently. And it's made up of 4 fabrics. We've got the super dark, we've got something I call the medium, and that's the floral pattern. We have the white, and then we had a medium tone that I used in these 2 little boxes. And those are the smallest pieces. And when I say small, I mean small. This one piece in here, this little piece right here of this floral, is going to be 3/8 by about 3/8 when it's finished up. So it's just going to be a little speck in that block. But that's the challenge of this. And these are going to go together like this. And while we're talking, I'm going to start pinning this one. There's going to be a lot of paper to pick out in this, and I have a feeling it's going to be a challenge. But that's just part of foundation paper piecing. I've come to acknowledge these are tiny little pieces, so you need to make sure that they are lined up properly. Now, I think these little blue-headed pins are fine pins, meaning they are thin and they have a lot of flexibility in them. So they're probably not the best to be lining this up. But we're gonna try to make it work. And I'm gonna just poke through and see. We're very close. Okay. All right, so I've got this one and this one clipped together, ready to stitch. What else can I tell you about this block? It came together pretty quickly. I think that you see all this mess here. I was working on this yesterday and I probably spent from very beginning to where I stopped about an hour and 15 minutes maybe, cutting all the pieces, trying to get them to fit together. One of the things that did occur to me yesterday that I finally found made a little bit more sense is to stop using pieces that you thought were the right size and shape, and instead just use a piece of fabric and get it on there correctly and then trim away what you don't need. That seemed to work better than trying to cut them to the size you needed and then place that in place. Now let's get started with this sewing a bit. Again, we're going to keep our stitches really small for the joining pieces, and we're going to start with this tiny one. And like I said, it is going to be a challenge because it is so small. The first challenge is getting that needle in the right spot. There we go. I think if we start there, we should be good. And I've discovered that sewing our seams all the way or almost to that cut line was very helpful to me to keep them maintaining their shape. Okay. So here's that center block, and that center block, as it is right now with the seam allowances, is not quite 2 inches. Well, this way it's 2 inches. This way it's just a smidgen short. Now that could be just because that's what we just sewed. About 2 inches. 2 inches by 2 inches. And there's 7 pieces of fabric in there. Imagine that. 7 pieces of fabric. Okay. Be that as it may, let's go on to the next one. Now, I'm going back to see how it says to join these. And we are going to have Y seams in this. This is something when I looked at this, I didn't really realize. But it says to, let's thread. Oops, we need to sew this one and this one too. So let me do that real quick and then we'll come back to assembly. And then here's the center. That's F. Did that say F? E, F, E, F, H. I'm not sure why it matters. Oh, yes, I do. The secret is here how you assemble it. These two have the dark blue piece come all the way in, and this one does not. So this one needs to be this way. So we need to ensure that that gets that way. Now what it's saying to do is to sew DCG, which is this one, to BA, which is this one, BA. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to sew that. Now I need to come in here and take this paper out first, and probably this paper here in the seam, just so we don't have to deal with that later. So I'm going to take a little break here and take that paper out because you've seen that process before and it is time consuming. So we'll do that and then we'll come right back. Okay, now we're going to put these together like we talked about. So we're attaching the DCG. I don't know where the G comes from. Oh, I do too. They're hooking these two together first and then putting this one on. So let's do that. Who knew? So I wonder where that G was coming from. And sometimes it is a little hard to follow what they want you to do. D, C, C to G. Yep. That's exactly what's going on here. Again, we're using that trick with the pins to line this up corner to corner. But look how nicely those came together. Wow. So nice. Okay, I'm going to pull the paper out of those really quickly. Perfect. Let's see if we can get the chair to start. There we go. Usually once you get it moving, it works pretty well. And then this other side, one little stitch. Okay. And we're just going to sew, and the rest of this paper we'll take out later. So now we have this piece that's the DCG, and that's from the D, the C's, and the G's. And we're going to stitch that together. That's this in the bottom. This might be out of screen. Let's put this here. That's this piece here. We're going to sew it to the BA. So this is the BA. Got a lot of, look at that. A lot of strings on this one. Okay. And we want to pay close attention to how they want us to sew that. We want the BBB here. So like this. That's correct. Ooh, that's going to be tough because that is a sharp angle. So we're just going to use our same techniques. Now, I'll let you in a little secret. When we took the papers out, or when I took the papers out, I took the papers out in that corner that they want us to sew. And because of that, it's going to be really a challenge to line that up. I think the way we're going to have to line it up is we're going to have to rely on our seam allowance, our cut line, to put us in the right place. And then I'm going to try to use this, but I think what I'm going to have to use is a regular pencil because we're working with blue fabric. So where would that be? I guess that's a good reason not to take out that paper. That's where it's going to be, right there. So we at least can see that little dot. Okay, let's try it. I think everything is lined up. I'm going to put a pin down here just to keep us on track because it's such tiny little pieces. only to the dot. Only to the dot. You don't want to sew past because we're going to rotate that larger bottom piece so that we can sew the other side. And that's our challenge today. Needle down, press our foot up, and we're going to rotate. We're going to hold the top one and rotate the bottom. And it's going to be a lot of rotating. It's a lot of paper to manage. There we go. And I'm going to take a picture of this just so you can see what we're doing. And we'll put that in so you can we'll put that in so you can see. But I do want to line up these other two dots, or the two corners. And in this case, this is going to be our target of where we want to sew to. So we're going to sew from that line to this line. If we have to take it out, we'll take it out. Some of that's just an act of faith that it's going to work out. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I think in this case, it did well enough. Let's see what's going on right there in that corner. It could simply be just the paper that's all cut up in there. But there we go. We've got half of it together. And it is a bit of a challenge. Our seam is coming across, is coming apart there. So to mitigate that, we're just going to sew in the seam allowance. And that'll hold it together. Good. Okay. So now it says we're going to sew HEF, HEF. Okay, these need to go together, and then this goes together here. And I have no idea what they're talking about. Straight seams, D to H and F to G. I think they're talking about putting these two together and then sewing this. I'm not really sure. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew, instead of trying to do what we just did, we're going to sew one on and then sew the other on. I think it's entirely too convoluted to try to do both of them at the same time when you don't have to. Let's make sure we've got these. Whoops, that is not the one that goes there. This is the one that goes there. You got to watch that pattern in the middle. So we're going to sew from the outside to that seam in the middle. What do we have? Okay. That looks good. Now it looks funky here because we need to sew these together. And I'm trying to figure out which way to do. I think we're going to take a quick break, and that will allow me time to take out some of the paper in this. Having less paper will make it much easier to sew. We'll just need to make sure that we have the points that we need to sew to marked, and will help us manipulate this a little bit better, and also not have you watching me take out seams. So I'm going to break here, and we'll be back in a minute and finish this up. It seems like to me this is taking a lot of time, but when I really stop and think about this block, I can understand why. Now, I deviated from the instructions just a little bit. I have these two pieces completely sewn to the center, and then I have this one sewn here, and then this fourth piece, instead of sewing it to the side, I sewed it to the center first. I want to try to see if that makes a difference in the ease of construction for this. So what I did next was I took out a good bit of the paper here. Certainly not all of it, and we've got a lot of little pieces that we need to deal with. Now, in one of these corners where most of the paper came off, you see I did put a dot here for where we're going to end our sewing. So that should help us. Then the question is, which side do we sew? We've got 3 seams. We've got a seam here, here, and here. So I think we're going to start with this one here, because it's going to be the most difficult to get positioned into place. And we need to bring this piece completely over. So we're going to put a clip there. We need to make sure that all of the pieces here are put in where they need to be. And taking that paper out, I think, helped tremendously. Now we should be able to sew right from there across. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to put a couple of pins. I've got pins everywhere. Into the body of this piece. There's one to hold it in place, because we will have to take that clip out. Now I'm going to try to start right here where this last one ended. I'm fairly confident that everything's stuck down in that way, so all the raw edges are out. They're not shoved up in there. And then we're going to start right at that point. And the needle should go down in there pretty easily if we're in the right place. Okay. And we're sewing right to where that line takes a turn. So let's see how that part did. Take these pins out. It's got a little bit of a bump there, but I wonder if that's just the paper. Let's see if we can get that paper out real quick, because we've got a lot of bulk right in that corner. And I was thinking while I was working on this that, you know, part of my thought process in this project was that in doing it with foundation paper piecing, we should have a lot of accuracy. And not to say that I want these to be perfect, but I want them to be accurate. But I also have to take into consideration how tiny some of these are, and micro sewing is not my specialty. I know there are folks out there who are doing miniatures and tiny little pieces. That's really not my jam. So we want it to be really nice and accurate, but we're not going to be neurotic about it, I guess. Let me just say what I'm thinking. Okay, so there we are. I'm not super happy with that. It looks like it's got a bow in it. It almost looks like it's not. Can you see it? You probably can't. I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and keep stitching. I think some of that could be worked out in some nice, what do you want to say? Nice pressing that kind of puts everything back in its place. So let's just go ahead. If that's the worst it gets, I think we're in great shape. So let's do this piece here. Now that one should be pretty easy comparatively, because we're just going down the side, and here at the end it should meet up with that little blue piece right there. Just keep that out the way, we should do fine. Now this one we can overstitch into the seam allowance. And these should be easier seams. And right where it starts getting thick, that's where you want to stop. Okay, that looks like it did well. Let's go ahead and do this one and then take some paper out and see how we're doing. Pull that blue back, and we're going to stitch right to the end. The Y seams are the killers, and if you have any experience in that and you feel like you're do Y seams at a very confident to expert level, this is probably going to be piece of cake for you. Okay. And that came together pretty well. Now, what's it going to look like when the paper's out? I have no idea. But you can see we've got a mess here with the way these seams are lying. And part of that is this paper. We've still got all this paper in here. So I'm going to take some of that out and see what we've got going on. I thought this block was going to be fun, and it was going to be cute when it went together, and more aggravation. You know, that was one of the things I was trying to avoid with this year's project. Okay, that's some of the paper. Start on this side now. There's just so many seams in such a little area. And every seam's got fabric and it's got paper. It's very bulky. So my hope is that if we eliminate that, we'll get a much better fit. Have you ever tried to do this? Are you an expert at foundation paper piecing? If you are, please leave me a comment. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Or is this just the nature of foundation paper piecing. I know to people who have never EPP'd, some of the things with that probably seem crazy. And you'd say, why do you do that? Why do you do that? Why are we doing this? But there are benefits in these processes and techniques that get us the results that we're looking for. Okay, I think we've got most, if not all, of the paper out of the center. There's a little bit still in there. I still want to leave my paper on the very edge. So I've got just this little bit. Let me do that real quick. And then we're going to put this on the ironing board and see if we can't make some of this problem ease into a good press. Okay. Oop, we got paper over there too. Paper, paper everywhere. Definitely gonna have to get the vacuum cleaner in here. I think next time we could probably do a better job with management of our seams, which way they're going, which way they should go. Maybe some pressing and some more paper removal as we go. I don't know, does that make it better or worse? Okay, I think we've got most of it out of there. Let's see if we can get that one last piece there. Oops, I do see another seam. So much paper. And if you're working on this and you're having as much problem as I am, remember that we're only talking about a little bit of material here. Our finished size is 6 by 6, my goodness. And if we absolutely had to do it over again, I mean, if it just came out horrible, yes, it's more work, but you could do it. The material cost would be very low. The only thing that would be of concern is if you did not have the quantity of material that you needed to redo it. Okay, I'm gonna go press and we'll see how we did. Well, this seems like the longest video ever, and I hope that by the time I finish editing, it's not. But I am finished with the block, and I wanted to show you part of the center. One of the little white stripes had a little bit of a curve to it, and what I decided when I was pressing it, and I could really see what was behind there, was the seam was not perfectly straight. It kind of curved out, and I think that was causing the problem. I could get to that area. It was probably like a ½ an inch, so I put another line of stitches just to kind of bring it in a little straighter, and that helped. Now, it is not absolutely perfect, but the seams that matched up beautifully. Here's our block, and this is 4 corners. And I can tell you, just looking at my little screen I have over there, from that distance, as small as it looks like over there, like this big, it looks beautiful and it looks perfect. Now, when I look at it up close, I can see the imperfections. But I think that the overall look of the block is really good. Now, I'm going to point out the things that I can see, and I think you can see here. This did not line up just perfectly. It looks like this piece on the middle is a little bit narrow. The points in the white are beautiful. Excuse me. And this has a little bit of a curve to it. But I think, let's set it down. I think overall it looks really good. It was a pain in the neck to put together, I think. Of all the blocks I've done, I think the one with the U-seams that we did, probably the last episode that you saw, was one of the worst, and this probably could have been the second worst, just because they're so tiny. But I think overall the look of this is really good. Now, I have taken out most of the paper. Everything is out here except for little pieces that I need to go in with a tweezer and take out. I've left around the outside, and I did spray starch. Now, I did spray starch this, which really helped in its appearance because it makes everything sharp and crisp. And I did stop fighting with the way the seams either folded to one side or the other, or they opened up, and went with whatever was most natural for the seams versus what I wanted to do with it. So there it is, you can see it. Now I'm going to try to pick out this paper in the middle, and then we'll leave this until we put the blocks together. But this is 4 corners, number 36 in our Azure plan, and I am so happy that we did it even with the frustration. Just stick with it, you'll usually get it, and like I said, if you don't, just redo it. Now look at all this mess. Whoa! I've got a mess to clean up. So that's going to be my task in the sewing room next. I'm so happy that you came today with me while we're working on this block. It was fun, if not aggravating, and happy with the way it turned out. If you like this video, be sure to give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost anything. Thanks again for joining us today, and we'll see you next week at the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Bye.